Hi guys, welcome back to the Butterfly Effect podcast. In today's episode, we will be ranking the Life is Strange double exposure episodes. So Jack, just kick straight off. What is our worst voted episode?
The worst voted episode was episode 5. Yeah, so like Life is Strange season 1, in our episode ranking, we gave episode 5 the worst. It's the same for double exposure. To be fair, I think a lot of people are going to side with us on this one, mate. Basically, the plot has gone completely wayward as to what we thought it was going to be. The end choice, if you accept Safi's request, it feels so anti-Max's character that feels a crime in itself. For me, frankly, just as an experience, I found it quite dull and boring. The repeating corridor thing I've seen 1,000 times. The endless conversations that you have with the characters in each location. It's like, okay, we get it, you're trying to wrap up the game, but God, I thought that this was supposed to be the big finale. How's this going to differ from saving Chloe in Life is Strange 1? But in a way, it sort of ends up falling into sort of similar patterns to what they did in the finale of episode 5 of Life is Strange 1, but actually they make it worse. You've got one choice. The fact that they've even got the gall to put the reflecting moments as choices in the final page is frankly an insult. And even looking on, I know this is technically not part of the episode, but even looking on as far as a sequel goes, it doesn't set much up there either, with the whole diamond thing that's much to look forward to. So yeah, easily for me, mate, number 5 is the worst episode.
Sticking to the number reflecting the episode, in 4th place we have episode 4, Penumbra. So yeah, I just wasn't a fan of this episode. The main reason being that the episode length cuts down by an hour, but it doesn't do all that much with it. So we know that the plot direction, and my biggest quarrel with double exposure in general, is that the plot direction changes one too many times. It starts off as a murder mystery, then we're having to defend ourselves. And this episode, at the core of it, guys, it's just a giant prank. Now, we only spend this episode in 3 locations. One of them we're at for a whole flipping hour. The first, quarter, if you will, we're spent, speaking to Safi after a big twist at the end of episode 3, where it's just a really linear conversation where it's not showing us, it's telling us, and it felt really drawn out and not great. Then we're in the Snapping Turtle doing a giant prank. Now, we're away from the whole murder mystery angle, and we're just getting justice on a teacher who plagiarizes one of his students that eventually, committed suicide, sadly. But in this one, so we're just pranking an English lit teacher, and it just feels like, one episode ago we were fighting for our lives, trying to find out who a murder mystery is. Now we're just throwing eggs, on an English lit teacher's face, And it just felt like the jeopardy completely minimized, and I just was there for the entire time, what am I doing? The fact that we only spend it in 3 locations as well, I was just getting really tired of the campus and really tired of the Snapping Turtle, considering I was in here for an hour helping Moses with his gingerbread house, trying to jam the printer, speaking to everyone, So yeah, it just wasn't great. And then, it all kind of clumsily ends at this big, kind of culmination where everyone's screaming, and then we get the shoot scene where, the choice, is pretty good, and then the episode finally picks up. But for an episode 4, where I look back at Life is Strange 1, it ends in the Jefferson cliffhanger. That is how you set up, and end the penultimate episode. Not like this. Episode 4 was just a massive letdown for me.
Getting the bronze medal is episode 1, so slap bang in the middle of our list. And it really is appropriate ranking for me, because I do look at this episode. It's not amazing, it's not terrible, and I forgive it a lot because it's episode 1, it's the pilot, it's just setting your stall out, you're introducing or reintroducing characters, you're introducing the locations, and the plot really is developing from here. And I think what puts this one potentially above episodes 4 and 5 is, at least when you're first playing episode 1, you have the excitement of a new game and you have the illusion of choice. At this point, you're quite naive to what, where that game is ultimately going to go in terms of choices and in terms of the story. So I was naturally more invested. You do get some decent moments, like you do have obviously the chat about Chloe with Safi, so that does get addressed, albeit we know that it doesn't get handled very well later on. We do have the Amanda thing, which does feel a little bit shoehorned and is quite a negative for me in terms of like one of the major choices. But one of the interesting choices for me, or at least at the time, was when you encounter Loretta and you think, oh, is this girl going to be like a Victoria Chase? She's going to be a thorn in my side. You wonder how that, relationship's going to play out later on. And, generally, like, it sets things up nicely ahead of the cliffhanger, which wasn't really a cliffhanger because we knew it was going to ultimately go into, sort of multiverse sort of game. But nonetheless, it's like, I'll come back to it, at least you had the illusion of choice at this point in the game. So, slap bang in the middle, episode 1.
Taking our silver medal, we're going to have episode 3 titled Still. So, I mean, to be honest, I've seen people say this was their favourite episode. I've seen people say episode 2 is their favourite episode. But we have put episode 2 slightly higher, and Jack will go in the reasons why. There is a lot this episode does right. There's a lot this episode does wrong. So I'll start off with the positives. I actually quite enjoyed going around the campus still. And I know, like, at this point, the plot, it's still, like, in a fairly strong element. I still preferred hunting down who this murderer was, but because that's revealed at the end of episode 2, we're kind of trying to find out why a doppelganger, like, is doing it. And then we're under this illusion that, it's this whole, like, something we've done in time, so we're trying to, like, alter our, like, choices, and we're still trying to backpedal and, like, sort that out. So, like, there is a lot to kind of learn and kind of chase, so there is still a thrill. And I really enjoyed, like, the element of going in Lucas's, like, office, having to switch through, like, do the timeline puzzles to kind of find out that he ended up plagiarizing his book, and it was a really cool way to kind of wrap up his villain arc in a way, and kind of, like, discover that, unveil the mask. There is also a really cool chase scene, like, I speak about how tired I got of the locations, but it was cool, like, the very end of the episode, we get this really stunning setting, to be quite frank, where we're running through the snow under the trees and stuff, and then we get this whole, like, base with this, like, whole underbridge place. And it's pretty cool that in this episode you can alter some relationships. I wasn't a big fan of, like, the underdeveloped characters and the underbaked romance. It just felt pretty out of the blue and left field for me. But it was pretty cool to see that we do have consequence from that in episode 5 if you decide to kiss, like, Amanda or Vin, or potentially both. Or even none of them, like, there is a lot you can do with ships and, like, relationships in this, even though there's probably too many that aren't needed to be there. The episode does quite a few things wrong, though. I mean, I'm not saying that the ending's a bad thing. It's still a really cool cliffhanger, but it just ended up leaving me confused. And episode 4 had the poor kind of task of having to, like, rush up and explain it really poorly. Like I say, it is the start of the plot shift, which is the thing I really dislike about Double Exposure in general. It starts to shift the direction of it, and this episode is kind of culprit of that. But the other big thing that Jack and I really cannot stand is how they handled the character in Alderman. It just feels like episode 2 introduced us this really strong character, and at the start of episode 3, he basically catches that it's you, and then to kind of, like, tie that up, they end up murdering him. And there's this whole interesting strand of how he's just been wiped from history, and then the game never touches on it again. And then the later episodes do an even bigger sin of kind of just completely forgetting about him and just sweeping it under the rug, and it just felt really unpolished and unfinalized. So episode 3 still has its massive flaws in my eyes.
Obviously, getting the gold medal is episode 2. So I'll start off with the negative for this one that me and Liam really sort of wanted to point out. The first one is, like, the Abraxas puzzle. So you find this Abraxas puzzle in episode 1, and then in episode 2 you can then find it on the side, and you've got an opportunity to complete these puzzles. Now, if anybody out there could actually explain whether there is some sort of logic to these puzzles, whether there's something you can find that can help with the puzzle, do let us know in the comments, because for the life of me, it just feels like that with these puzzles, particularly the final 2, you've just got to guess where, like, you've got to move the things into the right position, and therefore there's not really that sort of interactivity or, like, reward that you think you'd get from, say, obviously it's wildly different, but you think of, like, the Kate Marsh choice, which I think was also episode 2, if I'm remembering rightly, in the first Life is Strange, where if you get to know her, if you go and look around her room, it will then pay off dividends later on when she's, like, on the rooftop. and you don't get that reward here because it's sort of like a guess and go sort of thing. And it's even worse, the fact that even though it's on your sideboard, like for some reason you can't pick it up later on in the game, which is a little bit weird for me. But moving on to the positives, because this is obviously like the gold medal. There's some really interesting plot threads that are developed here. Now we've had episode 1 and set up basic things such as characters and locations. I think it was pretty neat that you can, like, there was that choice with Lucas, like whether to delete the photo or not, because it throws a little bit of shade and doubt onto Safi's character in terms of like, are we actually on the right side here of who we're protecting? Moving on forward from that as well, there's also the choice like of saving Gwen with like the footage. A lot of the choices in episode 2 had like real potential, and it's even the same with the Alderman one, like whether you choose to accept or refuse his request, because if you accept, you're then putting doubt on the relationship between Max and Moses. Obviously, if you refuse, then it's sort of putting a relationship down on Max and Alderman. But it almost like lays the foundations for things that could really come back and potentially bite you on the arse later on. But like I've said already, the game doesn't necessarily do that. But at least, as I said previously, you have that illusion that the things could potentially go well or could go badly, depending on the choices that you make in this episode. I think the highlight for the game though is potentially when you're in that room, in Lucas's room with the telescope puzzle. I think it was quite a neat way of combining perhaps just like basic puzzle skills with also like the mechanics of the multiverse, because you could then zip in and out of both, skip past him, make a little bit of noise, and then zip past him again to ultimately get to like the area you needed to get to. And I thought that that was really clever, and it did actually add, whether it was the dark room or like the music and just the whole atmosphere, it did have that level of suspense to it. And I think I did actually, out of interest, I did want to see what happens if you purposely screw it up. But all that happens is that he sees you and then he just go back to the same choice. But nonetheless, it was a lot of fun to play. And then of course you have that finale, which, you know, again, it's done well because there are breadcrumbs there to suggest that there could be a second Max, because you earlier on in that episode you have Reggie completely freaking out at the fact that he's seen his own double. So like, the breadcrumb is there, but nonetheless it's still like a decent ending, you know, a good cliffhanger when Moses like sits back in his seat and he's like, oh my god, like you're the one that killed Safi. So I imagine for people that got the Ultimate Edition that they were like pretty like happy with that as a conclusion, and it was like maybe a situation where they was then like, oh my god, I've got to wait like another couple of weeks before I get to crack on with episode 3. So yeah, there was far more positives with episode 2 than there was cons in my opinion.
Very well, and that is our ranking. So guys, please let us know your ranking for the episodes. Tell us which one's your least favourite, tell us which one's your most favourite. And if you're new around here, please like and subscribe, because we do all sorts of Life is Strange. We analyse the episodes, we rank the games, we rank the characters. We even get AI to create some games, which is hilarious. There's just a lot for you if you're a Life is Strange fan. But yeah, and we've also got more around the corner for you guys to look forward to. So yeah, we will see you in the next one. Ciao for now.
See you later.